The New York Mets, man. I have a lot to say about the Mets. They're on a downward spiral here. The Phillies and the Braves are breathing right down their necks. They're like within 3 or 4 games in the division. They drafted Kumar Rocker with the 10th pick of the draft this year.
The New York Mets select Kumar Rocker, a right-handed pitcher from Vanderbilt University.
Kumar Rocker was one of the highest rated pitchers in the draft before Al Leiter's son, Jack Leiter. Kumar was rated over him before this season when Jack Leiter just took off. He started falling in the ranks because people were concerned about his medicals, but the Mets decided to take that chance. We're going to take that chance. Oh my God, he dropped to us at 10th. Let's pick him. And then they don't sign him. So now Rocker has to wait till next year to be redrafted. And the Mets in return get the 11th pick for next year. That's what they're compensated with. And according to the Mets beat reporter Anthony DeComo, they didn't even offer him a contract after they saw after reviewing his medicals. And they say that they weren't aware of his medicals before they drafted him, which I find kind of surprising because if everybody else was aware of it, how are the Mets not aware of it? Also, Rocker, here's another thing from Anthony DeComo, quote, Rocker could have avoided the situation by consenting to an MLB-sponsored program that shares the medical information of top draft pitchers, but he risked failing precipitously on draft boards if his MRIs revealed significant elbow or shoulder issues. As such, sources said that Rocker did not participate, which allowed the Mets to decline signing him without even making him an offer. Per MLB rules, they would have needed to offer him a deal worth at least 40% of his $4.74 million slot value had he participated in the program. But they also might not have drafted him at all if they did, based on his medical. So essentially, he could have avoided the situation by consenting into that program where they would have had to have offered him at least $4.74 million. But because he declined to join that program, they were able to draft him and then not sign him if they wanted to. And then Steve Cohen comes in and says, education time, baseball draft picks are worth up to 5 times their slot value to clubs. I never shy away from investments that make me that type of money in return. Essentially saying these guys are worth way more than what we're paying them. Like, of course I would have signed him. So he's like basically he just screwed up the CBA talks for the owners next year, basically.
You think?
I think so, because if he's admitting openly these guys are worth more money than what we're giving them, like what do you think players are going to come at them with? They're going to say, oh, your own owner, Steve Cohen here, saying that these guys are worth more money. So why are you guys lowballing us?
But isn't that something that we kind of always already knew?
I think we always knew it, but it's like when you go into a car dealership, like we all know they could negotiate on prices. We all know that this car is worth less than what they're trying to sell them to us for, but we play the game. You know what I mean?
I'm just saying, like, now I know that's something tangible that people could use against the owners, but if you're someone that's always been negotiating these things, I feel like that's always been like a known thing. And again, like they're basing this off potential, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you can make any type of argument, I guess. And the return on investment. I think historically, looking back, these guys turn out to be worth more than what they're worth. And there's precedent for that. There was in the 90s, maybe into the early 2000s, there was a loophole in the draft system in free agency. And of course, Scott Boras discovered it, where if guys were drafted, the guys could decline the deals that they're being offered by their teams. And then they would essentially, like what happened to Rocker, instead of having to wait a year, they would then enter free agency. And then any team could go in and sign them. And these guys were making more money in free agency than they were getting by being drafted by teams. So we see that in the past, guys have made more money entering free agency. So that means that they're worth more money, essentially. I don't know. I feel like I just talked in circles there. But then Buster only made a good point after this whole situation with Rocker happened. He said, MLB and the Players Association are jointly responsible for this, but how absurd is it that a team can draft a player and choose not to sign him, as with the Mets and Kumar Rocker, and the player can't sign anywhere under the MLB umbrella? What a joke. It is kind of screwed up that the Mets, that he fell to the Mets for a reason. Obviously, the Mets decided to take the risk in signing him. And because they couldn't work out a deal, now he has to wait an entire year to enter Major League Baseball, and the Mets don't get their draft pick. Like, why can't he then go off and sign somewhere else? And you could place limitations on that. Like, maybe if the Mets couldn't agree to a deal with him or whatever,
and he enters free agency, maybe he can't make more than whatever he would have made max had the Mets signed him. You know what I'm saying? Like let him go back out there. Now he has to go into independent baseball, or he has to go overseas if somebody's interested in him. And Steve Cohen released independent medical records showing that he was healthy, that his arm showed no different, issues than what it had in the past. So I don't know. This whole thing is kind of crazy, and it's not surprising that it happened to the Mets. And I have more about the Mets. Jacob deGrom, man. Now you have Jacob deGrom is delayed. He's not going to be able to return until at least September. He talked to reporters on the field yesterday.
The next imaging is clean, and you get to start throwing again. What is the best case scenario for a return? Like, how many weeks is that?
Honestly, I don't know. That's something that we're going to have to talk about, and it's going to be longer than if it was just the flexor that was going to. So talking to it is going to require some like plyo stuff first, and then going into throwing.
Okay, so complete shutdown, and then some plyo stuff, and then throwing.
Yeah, if 2 weeks without picking up the baseball,
right?
It's going to require a little bit more build up. So.
But he said he hasn't been looked at again. Basically, he hasn't had another MRI to see if anything has changed. So that's all contingent on that. If his MRI looks like it's not getting any better, there's a potential that Jacob deGrom is not pitching again this year. And you have a Mets team who has Taijuan Walker, who's falling apart. In his last 3 or 4 starts, he's given up at least 4 earned runs, 5, 6 earned runs in some starts. Marcus Stroman is starting to look like the normal Marcus Stroman, which isn't bad, but he's not the Marcus Stroman that we were seeing earlier this year. Noah Syndergaard was pushed back because of whatever happened a few weeks ago. So when he returns, he's not going to be stretched out. He's not going to be able to throw, 7, 8, 9 innings. Cookie Carrasco just came back, so he's probably not going to be stretched out by the end of the season. That team is in shambles. They're losing a lot. The Phillies and the Braves are right behind them, and something tells me that we're watching the Mets collapse in slow motion right now. I have a feeling they're not going to make the postseason.
It's insane that Philly is only a game and a half back from the Mets, and the Mets in first place have a worse record than the Yankees in third place. Taijuan Walker pitched 53 innings in 2020, 13 innings in 2018, 1 inning in 2019. I don't know why I skipped over that. I guess because it looks like a bunch of zeros. I didn't even think he pitched in 2019. But so he's at 105 innings already this year. So he's probably just like the fatigue is probably getting to him at this point.
And the Phillies added Kyle Gibson, who he was kind of on the downward spiral with Texas over the last couple of weeks, but he's going to a National League team in the NL East. He's probably going to get a little bit better in the NL East. They also bolstered their bullpen. They brought in Ian Kennedy, who's been a good reliever for the last few years, and that's been their biggest weakness. The Phillies is their bullpen. So the Phillies only got better. The Braves have the best run differential in that division. I don't know, man. I have a bad feeling about the Mets. I have a really bad feeling.
The Mets have a -11 run differential. Crazy,
but crazy, man, crazy.